Hi there, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It, where we're going to address all sorts of topics that you want to hear about. I'm your host Claire, and today let's talk about money. We've got Pastor Ken here, who's our guest today. Pastor Ken, you're obviously the senior pastor at Nations Church, but before you were the pastor, you were an accountant.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and so today we really want to get your wisdom on how do we steward our money well as young adults?
Yeah, well, that's a really great question. I think money on its own can't be looked at as an individual entity. It's got to be looked at in the context of our own Christian discipleship.
Yeah.
And I think it boils down to a fundamental theology or a belief about what money is.
Okay.
So what we probably need to understand before we answer the questions about money, how do you deal with it? How do I handle it?
Yeah.
What do I do with it? We've got to come back to where money comes from, what our fundamental belief of where money comes from. Our original created intended design was that we were called to steward or look after everything that God created.
Yeah.
So all that we really have is the Lord's. When sin entered into the world, a new paradigm was actually introduced because of our fallenness, and it was called ownership.
Yeah.
So we only became aware or wanted or had a desire to own things, possess things as part of our fallenness. But our redeemed self, our Christian selves, were actually restored back to a place of stewarding what actually essentially belongs to God. And so when we talk about money, it's actually a false conversation to look at our money as ours. The Bible actually teaches us that all that we have is the Lord's.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're simply called to steward it or look after it. So that's the basis with which we can look at in terms of our theology around money. And then from there, we can answer all the other questions that come with it.
Definitely. That's incredible. And so I guess we have that question about what about the tithe? And as young adults, some of us, I guess, don't earn as much money as others.
Totally.
And you have obviously people that work very minimum wage jobs or on Centrelink.
Yeah.
Is it okay to tithe what you can afford?
Yeah. So again, we're asking the wrong question. When you have a fundamental belief and an understanding that it all belongs to the Lord, your next understanding would be that God doesn't ask us to tithe for Him. He instituted the tithe for our benefit.
Yeah.
Because the Lord knows that money is a terrible master, but a very good servant.
Yeah.
And so, when the Lord instituted the tithe, He actually put in a mechanism to help us not be beholden to money. And so here He is, and He's entrusting us with all that He's given us. And He's saying, you get to steward 90% of it. And I've instituted this genius called tithe, the 10%. So regardless of whether you're on $1 million a year or you're on $100 a year, that tithe is this beautiful genius of depending on which part of the spectrum you're at, you're actually saying, God, I trust you that you can do more with the 90% that I'm asked to steward than 100% if I were to keep it all to myself. And so the tithe of 10% has worked since the beginning of time, essentially. And so when you ask, I can't afford to tithe, or maybe some people might be thinking, will the Lord be angry if I don't tithe 10%? It's actually the wrong question to ask, because the Lord instituted the tithe for us.
Yes.
And so I would encourage everyone to be actually on the journey of, if you're not there with it, then make it a personal goal to get there. Make it a personal goal to say, Lord, I want to get to a place where I can trust you, that you can do more with the 90% that you've given me to steward than 100% if I were to keep it to myself. I'm not there yet, Lord, but I want to get there eventually. And so start small. If you've never been a tither, start with $1 out of every 20. Start with 5%, maybe work your way up. But I think as you begin to get on the journey of tithing, you'll get to see the small miracles that will help you to get there.
Yeah, great. And I love that God says, test me in this.
Absolutely.
That we get to test Him in the tithe.
That's right. And not many people can get there straight away. Some people do. It's like anything in your discipleship journey. Just treat money as this tool that helps you to become more Christ-like. And the way that you relate to money becomes this revealer of your journey with God.
Yeah.
Because Jesus said that you can't actually serve two masters. And so at any point in time, even in my own life, when I've seen my heart veer towards bowing down to money, it controls my decision making, controls my choices,
Yeah,
it controls my behavior.
Yeah, so true.
I start to see my heart veering away from being more like Christ and more to become what money wanted me to be. And so money is amoral, but it's this thing that the Lord uses to test our heart, to draw us either toward Him or. So I think it's a great journey to be on.
Yeah, that's great. I guess with the tithe, we say that we're giving money back to God. We're obviously not sending it up to heaven.
Absolutely.
What happens with the tithe when we give it?
Yeah,
where does that actually go?
Again, it's the genius of God that all of our tithe, as we release it to the local church, all goes towards strengthening and sustaining the ministries of the local church. So all our youth ministries, kids ministries, our high schools outreaches, all of the things that we enjoy as part of the local community, the local body, the tithe goes towards sustaining that.
Yeah, great. That's fantastic. God's obviously called us to live generous lives above and beyond our tithe. But when we don't have very much, how is that possible? How can we do that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And this is where I think as Christians, we're actually called to live not like the way other people who are not believers live. And so we ought to be on the journey of discovering the grace to be able to do things that don't necessarily add up.
Okay.
And so here is the beautiful power of the tithe is that through my years, and I started tithing when I was a student. And just on pocket money when I was a kid. I'm so glad that my parents actually taught me that. But I discovered that I had more to live on 90% than I did with 100%.
Wow.
And that's something that you I can explain to you, but you won't be able to understand it until you experience it yourself and live it yourself. And so as we begin the journey, so the Lord's so kind, He works with us, and as we journey with Him on the journey of tithing, we find that we get to experience the miracle of financial provision that we ordinarily wouldn't have experienced. And I think generosity begins to flow as we begin to see God move in us. Generosity is also practiced as well. And so, I think we're generous with whatever means that we have. And so it's not just our finances, but our time, which the Bible teaches us to be generous about with our encouragement. So it's about being other-centered. And so I think generosity is as we walk closer with Christ and we become more Christ-like, we have a greater appreciation for what He's done for us. Generosity then becomes this automatic outflow of that. And so I'd encourage anyone who's trying to get on the journey of generosity. What is generous? What is not generous? How can I steward that? I think if we put the calculations aside and go back to the heart, I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, great.
Generosity flows when we have a conversation with the Lord to say, Lord, I don't want money to be my master. You are my Lord, and I want to make money my servant.
Yes.
Generosity then ordinarily flows.
So good.
And I think all of this is really the narrative of a relationship that we have with God. So in my walk with God, I don't say to God, should I pray for 20 minutes? Should I read my Bible for 10? Does that equate to like a good relationship with you, God? Is that acceptable to you? Once we get into those religious conversations, we actually lose the point of it all. And so generosity comes from a greater walk with God, a greater trust in Him with our finances, a greater trust in Him that He can do more with the 90 than we can do with the 100%. And from there, we begin to see as we take steps of faith in generosity, as we help others, we're more giving. We see that the Lord puts in more into us than we would. And that's the infinitely more conversation.
That's amazing. When it comes to our finance, so we're talking about generosity and finance, is there such thing as unwise generosity in terms of giving away maybe too much money or spending too much or going into debt? Or if you've already got credit card debt or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah. Unwise generosity is giving when the Lord hasn't actually put it on your heart to give. So again, we're opening up greater conversations. All of this comes down to a greater canopy or category of obedience. And so I would encourage everyone who wants to walk in generosity to walk in generosity in obedience.
Yes.
And so my personal theology is that the Lord will never test you beyond what you can bear.
Yeah,
that's biblical.
true,
And so
true.
He will never expect you or put you in a place where you've got to do something that is going to get you into more trouble than not. However, if you've been silly with your money and you spend it on a $600 pair of shoes when you're only earning $100 a week, then you've got to ask yourself the question, why are you not in a position to honor God with your finances? Why are you not in a position to be obedient when He's asking you to give? And so it's not a black and white answer. It's really a case by case, a person by person. And I think I would challenge every single person that is dealing with in the area of money is to ask you this very simple question: do you have money, or does money have you? And if you can answer that question, it'll come back to this fundamental area in your life of who is your God.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Ken, for your wisdom in this
welcome.
area and helping our young adults steward their money well.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About It. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel and like our Facebook and Instagram page so that you don't miss an episode.